Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Needed Art History, where I'm sitting telling you some art history stories while knitting. So today I'm outside. We are outside. I might look a bit like shit and it will be like this because I am sitting in the middle of the little garden. I don't know how to call this, but like whatever. Cycled 20 kilometers here, so yeah. Today we're going to be continuing on talking about decorative arts, and today I will finally, crocheting. That's like in English, because like in Ukrainian we don't have different words for, for knitting with needles or with hooks. Like, yeah. So whatever. As I said, as you can see, today we're going to be talking about decorative arts again, and specifically about decorative arts of like northern Black Sea during the Greek colonization. I have no idea how I will name this video for it to be like kind of understandable, but whatever. So yeah, so before we will start, I will mention about pictures. So again, as like problems with Ukrainian art and everything, there is not a lot of pictures, so I don't think that I will be able to show you a lot of examples, like specifically from the territories of, like all of this is modern Ukraine, like territory of modern Ukraine. Just it's like the coastline of North Sea and plus Crimea. So it might be with pictures, the situation might be a bit sad, but I think still at the end of the day will be interesting for you. So before we will start, we will talk about like a little historical, part about this, because I'm more than sure that not a lot of you are familiar with history of Greek colonization of Black Sea. So yeah, so I will start a bit so you will understand the situation, how Greeks came there and whatever, and again what was overall situation historical there, and then we will dive into specifically GLYPTICS. I will explain what is this, and we'll show you some examples. So let's dive into our video today. So the Greek colonization of Crimea Peninsula started in 7th century, and it was going up to like 1st, 2nd centuries AD. So we started in 7th BC and ended in 1st, 2nd BC. So the first cities started to emerge, like Greek colonies in the territory, not just of Crimea, but overall. Again, as I said, the coastline of Black Sea in the late 7th century, the beginning of 6th century, and like in our history, our historians are calling this period the Great Greek colonization period. So this region was very attractive to Greeks because of its natural, wealth and favorable also conditions of life. So the northern coast of Black Sea, like at this point, was almost uninhabited. It was not completely uninhabited, so there were some tribes, there were Scythians there at some point, then Sarmatians, and like a lot of different other tribes, but they were, oh my god, I knew that will happen. I'm terrified of spiders, and of course the spider ran into me. So okay, I think this spider is now terrified of me also. Okay. So what I was saying, the Greek colonization and everything, and not a lot of everyone. So they, oh my god, nature. I love nature. So sorry. Yeah, moving on. Where is everything? The land of in this territories are pretty fertile. There is also a lot of rivers. It's a place for a very big harbors, as well as some dense forests are situated also in some territories. So all of these are very, very attractive to Greeks, and in some places Greek colonizers, they were obviously came in contact with these tribes that like local population, basically, as we can say, and this determined the specifics of of development of Greek culture, and specifically of development of art. This is why it's so interesting. So it was, a little bit different than in mainland Greece. So the very first Greek settlement arose in south of Ukraine in the 7th century BC, and it was called the city, so our historians and in our history we are calling this city Borisfanida, which is on the island Berezan. So I mean, obviously I will show you the map and everything. Then a little bit later another city, a very big, very famous city, arose, Olvia, which will apparently translate as happy, and it appeared on Dnieperbug estuary. Again, we'll be showing you the maps, don't worry. In the east of the Crimea in the year 480 BC, the big Bosporus kingdom, it's very interesting, also arose and formed, and in these cities the biggest and the most famous cities were, what did I say, in this kingdom the biggest cities were like Pantikapei, which is a modern city Kerch, then what else? I don't know. Fanagoria, Tikitaka, Feodosia. Also, Feodosia still stands and it still has its names like this, and well, etc., etc. In the western Crimea were founded such city as Khersones, also still stands, Kirkinitida, Kalos Limen, and etc., etc. At the mouth of the Dniester, the Greeks built the city Tira, another big and influential city. And in addition to cities, they built several sanctuaries and had interpolis status. Ancient slave-owning city-states on the territory of northern Black Sea region existed for almost 8,000 years. And ancient authors such as Hippocrates, like Strabo, Claudius Ptolemy, and what is most important, Herodotus, in his history, they wrote and they were describing the life of the cities and the structure and everything. So we kind of know about this thanks to them also. Ancient policies, the systems there were pretty similar to the mainland Greek, obviously. So the cities were like these independent policies, like these independent states, and according to their structure, like aristocratic or democratic republics. An exception was the Bosporus kingdom, which occupied lands on the shores of the, so again, in our history we call it Bosporki Mariyski, but in modern, its modern name is the Kerch Strait. So this was the part of this Bosporus kingdom. The Greek colonies had its own structures, obviously. So the central polis, around which were located some villages, hamlets, individual states. The city had a clear planned structures, obviously, as the cities in mainland Greece. They were divided into quarters with wide streets. It is interesting also that such cities were supplied with water through ceramics water pipes. In the center of the city there were a large square that was called the Agora, again as everywhere else. Administrative buildings, some gymnasiums, some shops, temples, altars, a treasury, a sacred grove, all of this diverged from Agora. The poor and artisans, though they were living in the outskirts, in the suburbs, we can say in the modern words, and also there were there were situated cemeteries that were called necropolises. When this Greek colony started to arise, the relationship with local population was pretty fine, pretty peaceful. So in the first centuries, these new cities, they didn't have any fortification. Just then, with time, when Scythians especially and Sarmatians started to be pretty aggressive, we can say, I don't remember this word in English, with each other and also with Greeks, then just the city started to build some fortifications, some defensive walls with towers and etc. And so, as everywhere in the mainland, the different crafts were started to develop, and there were specific, especially such as weaving, metallurgy. Sorry if my pronunciation of this in English. Like blacksmithing, glass production, leatherwork, pottery making. So yeah, different stuff. Basically, again, everything that they were doing in the mainland Greece, they were doing it here also. So the Greek colonists also successfully used the fertile lands. They engaged in agriculture, cattle breeding, gardening, like growing some wine, like grapes that were going to vine. How to call it also, I'm sorry, don't know how it will be in English, and well, etc., etc. The fishing also, and you name it. Trade also occupied a pretty large place among the Greek colonies. Trade routes were laid to Europe and to Asia also, because again, it's a very very good location. Crimean Peninsula and just overall Ukraine, we are laying on a very geographically very good. We're situated very comfortably, so we can say. So merchants created their trading factories there, and the most exported from Ukraine, from territory of modern Ukraine, from these Greek colonies, were wheat. So you see, nothing changed actually. Ukraine continue on doing this. One of the biggest exporter of this, and another thing that was very popular to transport from here was fur, was wax, was also such thing as honey, some fish, some salt especially because we have a lot of salt actually in the southern and eastern regions here in Ukraine, and well, etc., etc. Amber also was some wood, and also, what is most importantly, slaves. And according to some of these old historians, like for example the Greek historian Demosthenes, he wrote that the Bosporus kingdom at some point was transporting 70,000 tons of grain per year to Athens. So can you imagine the scales? So the inhabitants also of these colonies were pretty of high cultures, we can say, because there were found a lot of different stuff that were pointing out that a lot of people, a lot of these Greek colonizers, and maybe then some of the local population that also assimilated with Greeks, were actually able to write. There were also some gymnasiums for kids, obviously, where they were studying, where they were playing sports. Literature and music was developing also here. Theatrical different performances were staged, were held, or how to call it right. So life was going on basically like in the mainland Greece, as I said. So in 4th, 3rd century BC, then the ancient city-states of the northern Black Sea region experienced actually its period of greatest prosperity. But already from the middle of the 3rd century, situation started to decline and start to get pretty sad actually. So the active movement of nomadic tribes begins, in particular the Sarmathians, who wage wars with Scythians at this point. This undermined the basis of the well-being of ancient states, specifically such thing as agriculture, and also specifically such thing as trade. So this reason forced the Greek colonies to invite the Roman legions there. So the Romans stationed their garrisons in most of the cities of the northern Black Sea, and such cities as Olvia, Chersones, and Tyra became part of the Roman province of Lower Moesia, I believe it in English like this, because in Ukrainian adaptation it's Miasia, so something like that. And the Romans restored economic and political stability of the Greeks for Greek city for some time, but not for very long, because then in what is this, the 3rd century AD, in the year 270, the ancient cities were attacked by Goths. Then 100 years after that, Goths were followed by Huns, and Huns completely destroyed everything there, and new chapter on Crimea Peninsula began. But this is another thing. We're not interested in that for our topic today. So as I believe a lot of you know that Greeks are more famous for their decorative arts, for their applied arts and everything, and again, here it was also very, very common. What is also very interesting here is that these Hellenistic masters that were working in these colonies, like Greek colonies in Northern Sea, they were not just making something that was popular in mainland Greece. Obviously, they were taking in consideration the tastes of local population, thus completely different tribes, and at some point they were living neighboring with Scythians, so they were making some stuff for Scythians also. So this is what makes this art of this territory so interesting, this integration of different cultures, different even ethnicities, we can say, and thus it created and beautiful and interesting picture. But today we're going to be talking specifically about glyptics. So what is glyptics? The glyptics is basically a carving on a hard stone and on some precious or semi-precious stones, and it is considered to be one of the oldest art just overall in in humanities, we can say. So there are two methods of carving. The first one is engraved gems, or it's called intaglios. So what is this? It's the pictures that is created in deep relief. The second one is cameos. I think you heard about cameos. So this is high relief images that were also carved on layered colored stones. And so one is going deep and one is God, I don't know this word, to be honest. So it's getting like this, on the cameo. Images of some Greek gods, Roman deities, demons, everyday and mythological compositions, some famous art monuments, portrait busts, images of animals, monograms, some other just symbols were reproduced on this on glyptic products. So it depended, on period of time and on styles that were emerging and were popular in this period of time. So it was carved with the help of a diamond needle and powder on pieces of colored or monochromatic minerals. Inlaid gems images, thus these intaglios, were usually used as personal seals, some jewelry, or also as talismans. So the oldest stone seals were created in the form of cylinders or scarabs of the Eastern type, decorated with also these deep carvings. They dates back to 6th, 7th century BC. That's when the Greek colonization started. So they have a metal bracket that could have rotate. This time a metal signed rings appeared, the oldest of which were brought from Ionia. They were also popular in the classical period, then a little bit later. Until the 4th century BC, there were only two types of seals. So the first one is a metal ring with a carved shield and a stone gem on a metal ring, the second one. The last one was probably worn as a pendant on the wrist or on the belt, given the shape of these pieces. So seals were used for numerous purposes, from sealing, letters and documents to sealing houses, some pantries, vessels, personal belongings, and etc. Some of the very jealous men were even sealing women's part of the houses. So basically, as we can say, in a modern sense, it was a sign, signature. It was a signature, and thus a person could have used just one seal. This type of thing, during their lifetime. After the 4th century BC, masters began to mass produce metal rings with stone carvings on the shield. So gems on rotating brackets stopped being produced completely. Such thing as seals, it was, as I said, it was a very individual thing, and thus the carver did not have the rights to keep this molds, these impressions from the seal he carved. And according to the mentions of Diogenes Laertes, one of historians and Greek historians, that was the law, at least in the 6th century. I believe it continued to be like this during other period of time, but we know for the fact that in 6th century it was a law. And in addition, each of these gems also was, it was showing the individual style of those who of a customer of this seal. Because of that, because seal, it was some individual stuff, they were not allowed to be duplicated, obviously, to prevent deceptions and fraudery. However, archaeologists found some of the violations of this ban exactly in Crimea Peninsula. I had to change a bit my surrounding, my God, how to call it. Yeah. So some violations of the rules of not copying already existing seals was found by archaeologists exactly in Crimean Peninsula. Both of the works are associated with the name Dexament. So he is a well-known master of glyptics, and we'll be talking about him in a second. But the thing that were found, archaeologists found the repetition of the seal with a woman that is bathing, and the second one is a seal with the image of an eagle that are taking some animal, my God, some deer, I believe, somewhere. And so these two examples were found in Bosporus Kingdom, in Athens, and also on Crete. In addition, he copied a gem with the image of a deer on a pasture for about 5 times. Dexaman, he worked in a lot of places, so he was not working specifically just in Athens or something like that. No, he was constantly traveling through the main Greece, mainland Greece, through Greek colonies and etc. And it is believed that he copied them just because he traveled so much, and he just maybe believed or hoped that the owners of these seals were never crossed their paths. About Dexaman just in a second, because I just want to continue about these things in classical period. So in classical period, imported gems with various images of Hellenic deities, with images of animals and people carved on the shields became widespread through Greek colonies here. The shape of the rings in this period, thus we are talking about the 5th, 4th centuries BC, underwent a significant evolution. So from the leaf-shaped one, they got to ovals, and then they got to the round ones that we know now. So the great demand of such ring seals led to the emergence of its own local glyptic workshop in Pantikapai, so one of the cities in Bosporus Kingdom in Crimea, on Crimea Peninsula. So such workshops began to produce fundamentally different forms from traditional Hellenic products. So our researchers now call this type of rings the Pontic group of rings. Most often such products are found in the mounds in the Dnieper region and on the Kuban. So Kuban is on a modern territory of Russia. So we have Ukraine, there's Azov Sea, and there's Kuban. It is also interesting that most likely there were another type of workshops, the glass workshops, and they were not just making glass stuff, but there were specifically glass workshops that were creating these seals, but because it's glass, it's cheaper, so that was the cheaper version of the same thing that were done in in precious or semi-precious stones. So for those who cannot really afford those more expensive stuff. It is believed that Pantikapai had also such stuff. They had such a workshop, at least one workshop like that in Pantikapai. So regarding Dexaman, currently his name is one of the most well-known and one of the least, as we can say, basically, because biggest part of the name got lost in history because masters were not signing their works and anything. But with Dexaman, we know this because he was signing his works. Again, he was Dexamen was not the only one who traveled like this extensively through Greece and Greek colonies. So that was a common practice that masters were doing some amazing stuff, and they had their significant, for example, styles, even though they were not signing their works, but during their lifetime they were well known. So so they were invited into different parts of Greece and everything, and so Dexamen was completely the same. So this is again the situation that I told with copying these rings. So yeah, he was just traveling so much that he just maybe believed that those owners will never cross paths, or at least their products maybe will never even cross paths. So whatever, and so it was a very common stuff that some nobility, even not just Greek nobility, but again like Scythians, for example, nobility, were inviting these masters to their kingdoms, and thus these masters were traveling a lot. As I said, Dexamen's works are studied very well because he was signing his works, so we know for the fact like a lot of his works, and a lot of these works were actually found exactly in Pantikapai in Crimea. Also they were found, as I already mentioned, in Athens and in some other islands of Mediterranean Sea. Quite a lot of gems were found in Crimea Peninsula. They were not signed, but researchers and those who studied Dexamen were seeing a very distinctive stylistic similarities with Dexamen's signed works, and thus they are attributed to Dexamen also. So the heyday of his works is believed to be from the year 450 to 420, like BC. Part of the fact that he signed his work, he was remembered because he brought some changes into the already stable forms. So for example, instead of designing the back of the seal in the form of a scarab, he began to use the shape of so it's called like scaraboid. I don't know whether this word exists in English or how to translate it in English, so I'm sorry if it doesn't make sense, but I hope it makes sense, because it definitely is not a Ukrainian word. It's some kind of it was taken from some other language, so I really want to believe that it will make sense for you. So it was in this like different shape, and the convex part of which he did not decorate at all. In addition, he preferred laconic one-figure composition, and so in a lot of situations, in a lot of his compositions, this just blank background was actually a logical continuation of a composition, because it was given some air to the composition and stuff like that. The years 430, 420 BC, it is believed that Dexamen probably trained many talented carvers on the Crimean Peninsula who began their work by just imitating their teacher, but ended up creating the Bosporan school of GLYPTICS. So from the seal from Pantikapai, we also know exactly that he was born on island Chios. This info we can see is set on a gem with heron, where the caption "made by Dexamen of Chios" can be seen. In general, this gem is considered to be one of the the most amazing examples of glyptic art, just overall, not just of Greek colonization period. And for this gem he used chalcedony, which was very loved by Greeks overall. And the blue color here, we can see that it gives what I said, the logical continuation for the composition. So this is like this blue, more like purple sky, and this bird is freely flying into the sky. And another thing why it's also so impressive, because this work is just we can see that the bird is super realistic, right? And mind you, this work is just 22 millimeters on 17 millimeters. So this is just something like that, basically. This is maybe like that. This is 2 and 2 centimeters on 1 and 7 centimeters. So amazing work, right? This info also led to believe the researchers that he at some point even lived in Pantikapai, so he was not just coming and going. He literally just lived there. His influence of the art of glyptics can be traced among other masters. Thus, archaeologists found several repetitions of known gems authored by Dexamen. Also, some work based on the works of Dexamen. He is not the author, but some other masters were copying him. An interesting also find is a gem depicting a duck that flies near Kerch, where the Scythians actually ruled. However, among the already Hellenized Scythians, such a seal performed a completely different purpose. So it was just, purely representative stuff, just, to show off, basically. The Scythians from the higher echelons of society generally had this custom of wearing at least one ring on each fingers of your hand. In the next Hellenistic period, the art of glyptics received a new impetus. At the time, new minerals also began to be used, such as amethyst, for example, like Syrian almandines, garnets, and etc., etc. The appearance of products now changed also, pretty fundamentally, as we can say. So there were several reasons for that. The first one is that at the end of 4th, 3rd century BC, cameos, thus those things that have like high relief, not deep one, arose, and those things were like cameos. This is a pure decorative thing, nothing really functional in them, so they were inserted into bracelet, into necklaces, into earrings, and etc., etc. Second reason is that at the beginning of the 3rd century BC, masters began to make a new type of seal, a ring with intaglio. The carved stone played the role of a seal, and the frame accordingly was a decorative component. The third reason is thanks to the Macedonian campaign, Hellenic art was filled with more with Eastern motifs, and which obviously affected the plots, but also size of the gem. In early Hellenistic period, such decorated rings, for example, could have weighed up to 60 grams. Can you imagine a ring that weighs like 60 grams? That's too much. They were like gold, lavishly decorated also with cameos or with intaglios, and like whatever the customer liked. It was also a purely decorative thing, just such an object of luxury, no really function into them. So the end of the 1st century BC and the beginning of and 1st century AD already, the Bosporus kingdom had their, that was the period of some prosperity for Bosporus kingdom. In addition, during this period, the workshops of Rome and northern Italian cities became the main importer of gems and cameos. So this is the period of time when Romans were invited to protect the Greek lands. During this period of time, another local stone cutting workshop was opened in Pantikapai. Among their products, one of the most popular were the rings with intaglios in the form of cabochon, thus in this circle, and they were inserted into a frame of thin gold leaf. The products of the Bosphorus workshop were not influenced by the West. They did not use specific Italian stones, for example, such as sardonyx, agate, amethyst, and etc. There were no Latin inscriptions on the seals, and there were no images of genius of fortune, who was the most popular character of Roman glyptics. So glass cast gems and cameos were also started to be more popular during this time. Agate and sardonyx were the most often gems to be imitated by this glass. So the cameos, they were casted in mold, and the intaglios, they were just made this hot mass was just pressed with this image, and this is how they were making an intaglio. Again, such production was most likely continued to be situated in Pantikapaeas in previous centuries. The period of from 1st to 3rd centuries AD, this is the heyday for the realistic portrait genre. So that was also in Greece there, and this got to the colonist territories also. So engravings and cameos were no exception with this, new emerging, I will call it like a style, but it's not a style. So to the large extent, this is obviously connected to the growing propaganda, political propaganda, in the form of like the faces of the rulers and everything like that. So like coins, glyptics was like one of the, like we can say, the second most, the most convenient form, as we can say, because of its mobility. Glyptics with images of now already Roman rulers also can be found in the northern like Black Sea region. So this type of gems were then like signed either with the name of the carver, but that was not very common. Most common it was they were signing this with the name of ruler. So Julius Caesar, like Claudius, like Nero, Octavius, and etc., etc. And well, there's plenty of this type of like intaglios or cameos in Crimean Peninsula or like whatever. As we're talking about the masters, the one that we know for sure it was such a master with the name Scylax. So he left the most of works. And after him, the tradition of signing intaglios in Roman glyptic died, basically, as we can say. So there's not. I'm more than sure that there were some of the masters that were signing something after him, but mostly, this type of art became again completely anonymous. Another interesting plots that were depicted in this, like again, intaglios or cameos, it was actually a famous pieces of art. Of like sculpture, like some, basically again, some art monuments, some architectural stuff, sculpture, and etc., etc. It is also a part of the fact that that's just some interesting thing. It is very important also because a lot of the pieces of art like that are shown on this like on these gems again are now lost. So this is, that these gems now represent also some historical value, not just like in itself as a piece of art itself, but also because this is a piece of art that depicts another piece of art that already that was destroyed or is lost, or like whatever could have happened to that. So for example, there were found some of the seals in Pantikapae again that were depicting some of the like reproduction, my god, of monumental sculptural or like pictorial monuments that were found during archaeological excavations in various cities in Italy, for example. So even like that, you see, even sometimes pieces are not lost, and it is very interesting. So where is like Crimea and where is Italy? Another interesting stuff that was found is a intaglio with the head of Apollo from Pantikapae that dates back to the 1st century AD, and it is I didn't really understand the situation with the name there or stuff, but it is said that it is believed that this is a very similar stuff what was Italian master Gil was doing. So he had a similar works with depiction of the same head of Apollo, right? The stress here. Apollo, of the author of this sculpture was Scopas. So I didn't really understand whether maybe it is actually his work, the work of Master Gil, or it was again someone who copied the work of Master Gil, and somehow this piece got to the northern Black Sea region, to Crimea specifically. So even like that. So you see how like mobile art, and it was just traveling all over the place. So yeah. Hey. Believe that I'm a little flower or something. So this is like brief brief video about this also interesting stuff, because I myself really like these different gems, intaglios, cameos, and like whatever. Maybe I will search up something about specifically like Italian some also, but I just remembered that I have about also. So this is like kind of like Ukrainian art and kind of not. So it's just like art that was produced on the territory of Ukraine, because back then it was not a lot of actually Slavic even people were there in this region. So yeah, so just very interesting. And this obviously, even though the Greeks and Romans are like left after they were destroyed by Huns and everything, and these colonies like died, but still some stuff were there, and it was still influencing our art, like our language also. Like biggest part of this territory was under the rule of actually like a lot of Middle Eastern tribes. Well, I mean, at least that came from Middle East. And then after like centuries and centuries, Crimean Tatars came to this land and they started to rule there and everything. So so this is also, again, very interesting stuff, and it definitely influences, as I said, it influenced some of Ukraine. Like for example, you see like that I was talking about the Ukrainian beaded art, like our Ukrainian beaded jewelry. So the names, like for example, right, this name of like Herdan, which comes from, it is believed from Persian actually. And interestingly, so this beaded jewelry was mostly popular in the mostly popular in Western regions. And I mean, where is Western regions? Like, it's very interesting and strange how it got there, this name. So so this is how the influence, this is how the words of people maybe and everything was going on around. So it is very interesting. We have a very interesting country, a very interesting culture, but unfortunately we don't have people that are interested in developing and in like preserving that. I don't know how to call it right. The situation is very, very sad, to be honest, here inside of the country now, a part of the war. Like, but just the thing with culture is also very, very sad. And yeah, but I mean, I got to masters on archaeology, so I'm starting my classes in 1 week. So we'll see. Maybe maybe will work out better for me than art history. But yeah, but I'm very glad to that. So okay, I will not not torture you anymore. So yeah, the next video, I don't know what it will be about. It will be about something, and I don't know where it will be, to be honest. I mean, I'm not doing them regularly now because editing. It's like editing is the worst part of that. Talking is the most pleasant, the most amazing, but editing, I cannot, I really cannot stand to look at myself and listen to myself for another like few hours. Like, I don't know how people are doing this, but this is like the main problem. I'm getting so annoyed with myself when I'm editing. So yeah, so I hope you didn't mind to be seated like this in a little grass. And hope you like this video. Hope it makes sense, because now I was impromptu video, like I didn't plan it to film today, but well, I mean, I decided I'm here, why not? So yeah, so hope you find something new for yourself, or at least this just looking at beautiful stuff was satisfying enough. And yeah, hope to see you in the next video. So stay safe, wish you all the best, and again, hope to see you in the next videos. Bye bye.